There's another really important aspect, at least of my life, and I know it affects many creative people in the space, and that is the relationship between capitalism and music. Back then, way back when, you could get a vinyl, you could get a tape, you could get a CD. Now everything is on Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, etc. You pay $9.99 a month. I believe they're raising their prices at this point. But in an interview with Joe Rogan a long time ago, they actually pulled this episode once Rogan got the $100 million deal with Spotify. The Black Keys' Dan Auerbach said, and I'm saying this loosely just to give an idea, per play on Spotify, they get 0.0001 cent, something like that. How has capitalism destroyed the artists in the music industry?
Well, again, it's interesting that we are coming back to this over and over again. It's correct that we would, because it is so central. Capitalism is a system that says whatever else you may have heard claims to the contrary. Capitalism is a system that rewards profit maximization. Wherever you are, no matter what the business is or what level at which you work, whether you're the CEO or a middle manager or a worker at the base, you are told, and it is correct, that you're in the business of making money, that money is the bottom line, money is the goal, money or profit is to be maximized. You're to get your costs down as far as you can and to get the revenue up as far as you can. If you can jack the price up, do it. If you can get away with it. The only way people will punish you is if they can't afford to buy it if you raise the price. So you raise it as far as you can, watching how many customers do I lose relative to how much more I get out of all of those I keep. And that's, I get hired as economists to help businesses make those calculations. Okay, once you understand that, then you understand that everything else is subordinated to that. My father loved the phrase the almighty dollar. You heard it from him morning, noon, and night. It was his way. He was right. It was his way of describing the community in which he lived, in which the word Almighty, which would otherwise be a religious notion applied to a god or whatever, is applied in our society to our currency because it seems so daily reinforced that that's it. So when we come to music, if we can can the music and make more money canning it, then that's what we'll do. That's all we'll do. If we can make more money selling you an individual way we'll do that. Whatever we are doing, the minute someone comes along with an alternative mechanism that could make us more money, we'll drop the one we have, like the old 8-track tape, and it'll disappear from memory, and we'll go with the one that makes them more money. And now let me push it. Suppose the one that makes the more money is a less good quality of musical representation. Who cares? If you're two companies making records or making tapes or putting things on the cloud, and yours is uh, a better financial deal than the next one, you're going to see an awful lot of people choose what the economic system makes them choose, which is the cheaper one. And that's going to be a message to the other one. You better get on board with this new technology because otherwise you will enjoy the fact that your quality is better, but you will have a much smaller clientele. And look, this is no different from everything else. The people who make, I don't know, I'll pick something, canned peaches. Okay, there's 10 different ways to make canned peaches. There's different varieties of peaches. There's different ways of making the syrup that goes in the can. Some of them are more profitable than others. Guess which ones are going to be on the shelf? The ones that are more profitable. And if those injected into the peach something toward the end of its life that it shouldn't have, that later turned out to hurt us, that will be later after, 5,000 people have gotten sick. And then we'll say, ooh, shouldn't do it. It keeps happening. We used to have a Food and Drug Administration. I'm not sure that's surviving Elon Musk, but when we had one, the reason we had one was because this was happening all the time. And we were having food poisoning and all the results. Well, it's the same thing in the production of music or representations or mechanical copies of music. And it subordinates the singers, it subordinates the people who are expertise in the musicians. Now we're going to have, all the artificial ways. When I first saw, when I was young, I played in the orchestra. I played the violin. My parents wanted me to be a musician. I loved the music. I grew up in a European, I mean, I was born in America, but my parents were European, so we grew up with, classical music and opera and stuff like that. And I loved all of that music and I really, enjoyed it. But I got to tell you, when I went to my local orchestra, it was very poorly um, attended. I even played in the orchestra in the town I lived in because they had one. It has since stopped. They can't sustain it. Why? Because people said, "Well, the music sounds better on my music machine." Well, I tried to explain to them, yes, but music isn't just that. It's the whole experience of being in a room and watching something that is quintessentially collective. All those people in the strings section and in the bassoon section and in the drums, how they've all been brought together to do something that's radically different from what any of them can do alone. This is an experience. It's like, can you pray at home? Yes, but why do you go to church? Because it's a very different thing to be there with all the other people and the minister talking to you. And they look at me as if one was obvious and the other one was a mystery. But we've killed off directing. Who can afford it? I don't know if you've ever looked. My wife recently went to the New York Philharmonic, Lincoln Center in Manhattan. It costs several $100s a ticket. No one's going to do that. People go there because it's a social event. They don't even listen to the music. And the people who would go for the music, well, they turn on their Spotify and listen to it that way. It's a terrible loss of a whole range of experiences. The people have studied this stuff. Music is the most emotive or emotionally engaging art form, more powerful in the way it can reach you than a picture or a sculpture or other things or a poem. Music has a, and to deny ourselves the collective capacity to enjoy live music. I'm going to say something now may upset people, but for me, is the equivalent of saying to religious people, you cannot anymore go to a place called a church or a synagogue or a mosque and together with other people who share your belief, engage in a religious experience together with whatever you think is up there in the sky. We would think of that as a horrific denial of a basic right. Well, capitalism has denied me that right in the setting of live music. And that's why people like us still are the few who frequent the clubs that still exist that actually get musicians together so that you can have a drink and sit there and let that music play with your emotions and your feelings.
I'm very passionate about this subject, and I'm glad you brought it up. A cohesive collective is also how I feel when I go to many shows. I've
Yeah.
been to plenty of festivals, and I now have been completely priced out. When I started, it was reasonable. Being part of an entire ensemble of music loving people that want to belt out every lyric
Right.
it is a religious experience. You're
It is
spot on. And
absolutely
now to see tickets be $300, $400 for one show, or a festival that I used to go to being $600, $900, 1,000 plus, you're right. They are pricing us out. And
yeah,
now you're going to get the crowd that you're asking for in return.
right. And I don't want to be mean spirited, but what you're doing is you're limiting these experiences to the richest people. And
Mm-hmm.
look, that's what's going on in our society across the board anyway. That's why people are angry about the inflation. The inflation means that that part of the grocery store that I used to go to and pick something, I don't go there anymore because I don't want that sad experience of saying, "Oh my God, I can't pay that amount of money for that can of pickles. I'm not going to do it anymore." And then you're proud you're not going to be bamboozled, but you're also going to be without the pickles. And this is the problem with the music. It's awful to go to the opera. I love, there's certain operas that I just sit there, and for people who don't know, it's an art form that is it's the most spectacular art form because it literally brings together the music and the poetry and the spectacle all together. That's why it had the meaning in Italy and Germany, where it is so important as an art form relative to what we have here. But in this country, most cities have no opera. That's it. You don't have that. It's not available. It's as if you lived in a city that says, okay, you can have this and that, but we don't have bread. And not in this town, no bread. You have to do without bread. What? Why? And that's my answer always. Why? And the answer is we allow these things to be subordinated to profitability. Let me give you an example that maybe will help people. In every city or town, I'm talking to you from Manhattan, so I live in a big city, heaven knows. In every city, the land in the middle of the city is the most valuable for all the obvious reasons. So here in New York City, for example, we have something called Central Park, running from 59th Street in the middle of Manhattan all the way up into Harlem, and from east to west, from Fifth Avenue over to Central Park West. And a huge tract of land, a beautiful park, well maintained by the city of New York. If profit governed this country in the way some people want, that land would long ago have been used to build luxury apartments. And the way you know that is literally around every one of the four sides of that rectangular park are luxury apartments costing a fortune if you want to own or rent in one. But we don't allow, as a culture, we did not, at least so far, allow that land to be subordinated to profit. So there is no profit made off that land. We do without the profit. And what do we get in exchange? A spectacular piece of nature, beautiful tall trees, ponds and lakes and meadows and plantings of flowers and bushes. Every New Yorker, or for that matter, anybody, New Yorker or not, is free to go in and out of that park whenever they want. You want to have a picnic with your friends, you take a blanket and a basket of food and drink, and you go in and you sit on a manicured lawn looking at the ducks in the pond, taking a boat out on the pond if you would like to do that. It is a spectacular resource. And if you go on a nice day, you will see thousands and thousands of people walking, sitting, picnicking, biking. It's spectacular what it does for this city. And everybody's in a good mood because of the whole feeling of the place. There are vendors going around, selling ice cream. It's a wonderful thing, and we wouldn't have it. And in many parts of the city, it doesn't exist because they haven't, for whatever historical reason, set aside something that they want that cannot be allowed to be subordinated to profit making. If we wanted the kind of sports that we could all think about as being an intrinsic part of our lives, for our kids, for us, if being engaged in sports was made available the way when I went to college, I didn't know anything about intramural sports. I went to college thinking about courses I was going to take and major. But my dorm leaders set me down the first day and said, one of the things we do here is, and we would like you to play. And which sport do you enjoy? Have you played this in high school? They got me involved because it was understood by them to be a valuable part of there was no profit, nobody was making any money off of it, and I loved it, and so did everybody else. I want to make that, if you want to know my druthers, I would like that for the whole country. Why
Mm-hmm.
don't we have, the way sports could be in our society? If you have to do it the way working people used to do it. That's another thing, by the way. I lived many years in New Haven, and when I was in New Haven, I was on some sports teams. They were sponsored by local small businesses, so we all wore, shirts or pants or caps that said, Louis Car Wash or
Oh yeah,
whatever
been
the hell
there.
it was. And Louis, he didn't have to do much. He had to shell out a few bucks for the caps and maybe for the bases because we brought them to the fields that the city maintained. But there was nobody making any money off of this. This was something that the city provided us the playing area. They kept it clean. They kept the grass mowed. They would, if we applied, send us a referee who would be, the referee for the game. And we got the caps from the local business, and he liked the fact that the few people who gathered and watched would see a cap with his business name on it. Everybody was able to participate. Nobody made any money off of it. All of that's gone.
Mm-hmm.
All of that is gone.
It's terrible. But
Yeah,
I hear you. We used to have to do that too with Little League.
yeah.
It's
That's
actually
what it
funny
was.
that you brought up Louis because there was a little Louis that was in downtown where I used to live. So that's actually funny.